Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So good evening and welcome to our parent university. Just as a little bit of background as to why we're sitting here this evening, I'll share with you some notes. So we have a district improvement team, and one of our goals this year is to provide information to families in our community about our district plan, as well as our focus of our goal, which is to increase student achievement. In 2019, our district was identified as a target district for school improvement, and that was based on our student data from 2017 and 2018. So we had students that were not meeting grade level expectations according to New York State Education Department. So we are a target district, and that's why we have a district improvement plan. The data that they look at each year comes from a lot of different sources: attendance, graduation rate, Regents exam proficiency, as well as 3 through 8 state assessment exams. The assessments have been around since 1999. Regents exams since like 1865, but the fourth grade assessment since 1999, and it started in grades 4 to 8 for ELA and mathematics. And these exams were put in place as benchmarks, so this way when students got to the high school and started taking high stakes exams, they weren't just failing. We knew in advance from 4th grade and 8th grade how they could potentially be on the trajectory for success at the high school. Those high stakes exams, as we know them, are called Regents exams, and they're high stakes because in order for a child to graduate from New York State with a diploma, they need to pass those exams. In 1999, when students started taking those exams, we had almost 100% of our students taking them. And if students didn't perform well, they were forced into academic intervention. And that was another safety net to make sure that kids could be on the trajectory to pass the Regents exam. Well, 4 through 8 testing continued, and then they expanded it for grades 3 through 8. And those exams filled the whole, the whole gamut. Where 4th and 8th grade tests were still a little bit more rigorous. When it first started, 3 through 8. 4 and 8 were 3-day exams, and the rest of them were only 2-day exams. So they really made the 4th and 8th grade benchmarks. In 2012, we had the implementation of Common Core curriculum, and that followed with APPR, where we use student assessment data to evaluate teachers. And that triggered a large movement across Long Island for parents to say, my child's not participating in state assessments. And over the last 9 years, our district, Eastport South Banner, has seen a steep decline in students participating, and currently we have 25% of our students who participate annually in our state assessments. We have a district plan that focuses on increasing student achievement, and we're doing that with the development of our curriculum, alignment of our instruction, professional development for our faculty, monitoring student progress, and providing interventions for students when they're needed. And as we strive to achieve this goal, we need our families. We need you as partners. We need to know what skills and concepts our students are mastering, where their strengths are, what their needs are. And although teachers provide assessments as part of their daily instruction, state assessments allow us to see a bigger picture. They allow us to see how things are doing in a grade level, in a school, and across our entire district. So this evening, I'm joined by this distinguished panel of parents, teachers, and administrators to provide a new understanding of the state assessments, how state tests have changed over time, how the data that we get from our assessments is shared, and most importantly, how we can work together to help our students reach their full potential and academic success. So I want to thank you all for being here this evening. I want to thank our panel for being here this evening, and I'm going to ask them to go down the line and introduce themselves, who they are, and where they come from.
Thank you, Mr. Frankel. My name is J.M. Jackson. Welcome. I'm currently principal of South Street School.
Good evening. My name is Ben Franquez, and I'm the Director of Special Education.
Good evening. I'm John Christie. I'm the Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction.
Hello, my name is Rosa Yancon. I'm a parent in the district. I have 4 children, 2 of which are in the high school, 1 at Eastport and 1 at Tuttle.
name is Rena Angolia. I'm a parent in the district, and I have 4 children, one in most of the buildings.
Hi, my name is Liz Rodman. I'm a reading specialist at Eastport Elementary.
Hi, my name is Nina Smith, and I'm a 6th grade teacher at Dayton Avenue.
Okay. So our first question that we're going to ask our panel to discuss is, even though there have been major shifts in how the results of these assessments are used, what do you think is one of the most common perceptions about the use of these assessments? And Ms. Rodman, would you like to start us off this evening?
Sure. Something that I heard a lot about from parents of my children's friends was that teachers spend time teaching to the test and that it's a waste of their time. And I had to really think about that, and I don't think that we are spending time teaching to the test. The tests are a reflection of the New York State standards. So we, on a daily basis, teachers are addressing the standards and doing our best to teach in multimodal ways to help the students meet those expectations. And the state assessments are measuring what students understand, and it gives us information on maybe what we could do better, a better way that we can address student needs. I've also heard complaints about the rigor of the test, that they were inappropriate or developmentally inappropriate, and the state has made a lot of changes. The test is shortened from 3 days to 2 days. The passages are more age appropriate, and they're no longer timed, so there's less pressure on students. Another thing I have heard from parents that they were concerned about was, if my child doesn't do well on this test, then they have to get pulled out for reading, or they have to get pulled out for math, and that was the case in the past. But it's no longer true. It is a data point. It gives us information on how that child did in that subject area on that day. We can use that information to help us change our instruction, but it's not a deciding factor in a child receiving AIS.
Thanks, Ms. Rodman. Mr. Jackson, did you want to answer that?
Sure. I would agree that the most common perception is that these tests still relate to teacher annual professional performance reviews, or otherwise known as the APPR. And as Ms. Rodman pointed out, also relate to student placement in subsequent years based on their performance for that particular year. When the assessments were first rolled out, all facets of their design and implementation were, by all accounts, a complete disaster. As such, this led to a number of grassroots movements across New York State that highlighted the inherent failures of the test in all ways, shapes, and form. And at the time, this was covered regularly in media with almost a daily loop. Since then, the current assessments have been disconnected from teacher APPR for some time. They're considerably shorter in duration with no time limit, as Ms. Rodman had pointed out also. And the reflected test items are derived solely from the 3-8 learning objectives that our curriculums are actually based on. So there's a direct correlation between the test questions and what the children are actually learning in the classroom. Unfortunately, the changes were not highlighted as much by our media once this went out. So I believe there's many parents in our communities today that still feel the test as previously designed years ago still exists as it is. They're not trusting the test. There's a considerable amount of mistrust behind them. Unfortunately, the new tests, the way they're designed now, they provide authentic questions that directly connect to our 3-8 standards, as was shared, and it gives us an important instructional point and cues for how we should be instructing our students based on how they do on the test. It's just one other way to look at their performance and things that we have to do as a district in order to improve in specific areas.
Thanks, Mr. Jackson. Ms. Diana Cohen, did you want to add something to that as well?
I would love to. I think I'm loud enough. Or do you need it? Good? Thank you.
No, I think maybe you
As you
should,
want it, okay.
just because we're trying to catch it on.
Gotcha. As a parent, I believe one of the common perceptions about the use of the assessments are that they're going to have some type of negative impact on their child. And they, the parents need to understand is that they do not go on any transcript they're not on a permanent record. They are used as a tool for teachers, for the district, for the state, to see how they're performing. And because of that, I do not share my results with my children. They go and take the test. I tell them to do the best job they can. When they come home, it's over with. We don't discuss it. It's, when the results come in the mail, I look at them for myself to see where my children have scored, but I don't review that or go over that or discuss it in any manner with my children. I will tell you from my experience that these assessments have helped me to learn about my children's academic achievements and where they are. It is in no way an indicator, the only indicator that I use on how they're performing, because we all know that not every child is a great test taker. So you cannot, it's just a tool, I say it's a tool in my toolbox as a parent. I look at where my child's strengths and weaknesses are, and I see if it correlates with how they're performing on these assessments. And then this guides me and helps me with their academic career and where we can go further from there.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody else on the panel that has something they wanted to add?
That's number 2. Okay.
Well, did you have something you wanted to answer this question or for the next question?
That was the first question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm ready.
I'm glad you're so excited. So, Mrs. Smith, let me ask you this question. Could you briefly explain how you would use these results of the assessments to shape your instruction to better meet the needs of your students?
Sure.
Great.
I just was excited to use this. Okay. As you've heard other people say, we have listened to complaints and concerns of parents, teachers, and educational stakeholders, and the test was reimagined to align with the standards. The results, which are released along with the questions, act as a roadmap to drive instruction, but they're only one of the facets that teachers, educators, reading teachers, whoever it is in the educational field, use to assess the children. Teachers are able to identify strengths and weaknesses of the students and create meaningful instruction. As an E&L classroom, I am able to gather invaluable data and address the needs of the specific population that I am working with. I'm able to plan lessons, I can correlate the curriculum, and I can also reflect on my own practice to keep my students in line with the curriculum and to help them grow.
Thanks, Mrs. Smith. Dr. Christie, did you have something you wanted to add?
Thank you, Mr. Frankel. I suppose that if I was a newspaper editor, the headline I would write is New York State 3 to 8 assessments in ELA and math. Low stakes, high leverage. It's reframing a perception that did exist, was real, and doesn't exist and isn't real today. And that would probably be first and foremost. In terms of, from my seat at the district level, how I use these assessments to shape instruction and instructional decisions, it's really a multi-pronged approach. Our boys and girls sit for any number of assessments every single day, even before they leave their home. They may be assessed by their families. Did you make your bed? Right? And so on and so forth. Did you take care of those responsibilities at home? And then we have responsibilities at school. We collect assessment data in iReady, which is a diagnostic that's administered 3 times a year. We collect assessment data in Fontes and Pinnell, which measures our boys and girls' reading levels 3 times a year. We assess boys and girls in any number of ways in the classroom, from formative assessments to check-ins, to quizzes, to extended writing prompts. And we collect all of this evidence in order to help inform our decisions. We have any number of tools within the school, from grade level meetings to our MTSS teams, to data level meetings we have that take place between our students and our teachers and our principals and district level administration, to help us better understand where we're making the mark benchmark and what we can do better. And the New York State assessment system is a valued, underutilized tool in the last several years that I believe can be a powerful change agent to help us support our instruction. There are any number of reports that we receive from Eastern Suffolk BOCES. It's referred to as the BOCES Assessment Reporting System. Just to go over maybe 2 or 3. When boys and girls sit for the assessment, and the larger the number of boys and girls, the better the informed decision we can make based on the end of students we have taking the ELA and maths assessment. Release question reports. One of the criticisms, and rightfully so, in 2013 was it was like the Wizard of Oz. Don't look behind the curtain. And the state was not releasing the assessment data for us to analyze as districts. So therefore, it really wasn't something that benefited us. Now they release nearly 75, sometimes 75%, and sometimes more of the items. For instance, last year in the 2021 math assessment in 4th grade, there were 26 items, I believe. They released 19 of those 26 items. In terms of the length of the test, I'll end with this. If you take Envision is our core resource for math, and if you take a cumulative topics 1, 2, 3, and 4 assessment, there are 30 questions on that assessment. The New York State assessment in math had 26 items in book 1. Our boys and girls sit for between 45 and 60 minutes of math instruction each day, and between 90 and 120 minutes of literacy instruction each day, between readers workshop, writers workshop, and strategy groups. So when we talk about the amount of time that our boys and girls are attending to reading and math and writing each day, it's actually significantly greater every single day than it is the amount of time they'll sit for the assessment on those 2 days. I got a couple of more points, but I think I'll save them.
Thanks, Dr. Christie. And just to piggyback something that you had said, on our district website there will be something about our parent university, and it will have links. So this way, if you want to look at some released questions, or if you want to go to the state website, you can just click on the links that are right here. This is a PDF resource that'll be on our district website, so you can see those things for yourself. So we're going to move into the next question, which really affects us, and mostly why we're here tonight, is how can we as a community better address student preparedness and confidence as these assessments? Ms. Waterman, would you like to start us off again?
Sure. So in our district improvement team, we have representatives from different parts of the district, some primary-aged primary teachers, intermediate teachers, and high school teachers. And what our high school teachers are reporting is since this whole opt-out movement started, there's been a huge gap in the amount of students that actually partake in these formal exams. So there are students that are reaching high school and they are sitting for Regents exams and they have no experience with sitting for a formal exam. So a lot of the anxiety that kids experience before that big exam, they haven't had the opportunity to conquer that and see, okay, I can face this and I can get past it and it's okay. My job is to do my best. The 3 through 8 tests are a low stakes opportunity to get over that fear, give it a try, practice their test taking skills, see what it's like to sit for an elongated period of time and stay focused and work at their best. And when we're not allowing them that opportunity, the stress is compounded over time. By the time they get to high school and have to face these tests to graduate, they haven't had that experience. So I think to prepare students, it is a positive for them to have this experience at a younger age, get over that fear.
Thanks, Ms. Rodman. Ms. Ingolia?
Sure, it's actually a perfect segue. From the parent perspective, I think about my kids, like with the end in mind. whether it's the end of the school year or the end of, their experience in public education, and, what do I really want them to leave ESM with? And, assessment is part of daily life, as many of you shared, and unfortunately, it's become a negative term. So I think, from my perspective and, my groups and people that I communicate with in the community, if asked, or it comes up in conversation, I think it's my responsibility to say, listen, these are not bad endeavors for our kids, and maybe as in education in general, we've created some of that, that negativity, but now it's also our role to kind of pull back that curtain and say, maybe this type of assessment, standardized assessment, has gotten a bad rap, but it also connects to this authentic activity that we do in the classroom, whether it's math or ELA, and I think the information in the Parent University handout is, is an exemplar of that. When you talk about lifelong reading and writing practices, standards of math, and you connect, say, a test question to that, and then perhaps to something else that is going on in the classroom, which I believe is above and beyond what the state test assesses, then I think you have, for a parent, a very clear picture of the piece of the puzzle that test plays. So, it's not easy. I think, in terms of the strength of that grassroots movement, we have to do our part now in communicating that. So I think it's the communication from the school and the communication that we can do on our own level as parents.
Great, thank you. Dr. Christie, final word on this?
Yeah, I think I'll segue as well. You use the term "begin with the end in mind," and we're proud at Eastport South Manor and our 4K6 buildings to be Leader in Me schools. We are partners with the Stephen Covey Institute in implementing what was once began with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, was then moved into the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, and now is also authored in the 7 Habits of Happy Children. And the fact that when we think about how our assessments can be related to our Leader in Me initiative, we want to provide boys and girls with a high-quality instruction in which every child receives a first-class C. And the Leader in Me promotes children to be self-directed learners and goal setters. And when we can have those discussions around assessment, around standards and skills that are aligned with what boys and girls need to know and be able to do, and then have them target those goals, have them work for those goals, have them take the assessment, have them measure their success, have them identify areas for growth, and have them identify areas where they want to celebrate, and then begin that cycle of continuous growth over and over again. And it's similar to a school year. You have the fall, the winter, and it ends in spring with new life. And there's that cycle of learning. And I think having our boys and girls sit for these assessments is an integral part of being able to have those discussions with our boys and girls.
Anybody else have anything they want to add? So it seems like we're on the segue train, because Dr. Christie just gave me a perfect segue for our next question, which is learning is a process that begins with the very first day of school. And what do you think your role is in this process? Mr. Franklin, would you like to start us off?
Sure, thank you. Well, looking at it from the special education lens, the district has an obligation for a child find, and that's for us to identify our students who are struggling learners. We use a variety of data points and assessments to screen our students, and what we want to find is a complete picture of our students. We want to make informed educational decisions, and these state assessments can be another tool that we have to help us assess and then assist our students.
Thanks. Ms. Iacone?
I'm going to be the parent perspective, especially the first day when they start school. Right off the bat, set a routine. And this routine will help them do life. Get a good night's sleep, wake up in the morning, make your bed. That's a big one. So you know you accomplished one thing by the end of the night when you go back to that bed. Just show your children that how excited you are to watch them learn and grow as individuals. Let them know, homework procedures and get them excited to be a student in the classroom. I spoke the other day about how when I grew up, school was viewed as our job. And my father always used to say, this is your job for now. Go to school, learn, do the best you can, and just, try your best. Don't give up. Even if something's a little challenging, it's okay. But most importantly, as a parent, I would say just be at your child's or your children's lavish cheerleader. Praise them for their accomplishment, and also be their biggest advocate when they need the help. Your child is going to feed off of how you approach these assessments. So, as I said earlier, in my household, I don't put a lot of stress on it. I tell them, it's 1 day, it's 2 days, and then we're going to move on. You're still going to school, it's a normal day, you get up, you go, it's okay. And I think if you have that approach, their anxiety is going to be less as well. And we've mentioned this before, we're preparing them for life skills, for their future by just knowing these routines from an early age.
And Ms. Iacona, I'm just going to piggyback on something you said, which is setting that stage for children to feel that they can take on challenging work and not give up. If you look at the state standards and our practices for reading, writing, and math, they all have something very similar, and that is persevere through challenging tasks. So our state recognizes that learning can be difficult at times, and it's important that we keep going. And we know that it's not going to be easiest the first time, but it might get a little easier the second time, the third time, or the fourth time, but not to give up. So I really want to thank you for sharing that perspective with your parent. And I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Robin, if you want to jump on that.
So I am a reading teacher. So I work with students in grades 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And something that I've noticed with my 3rd graders is when they come in, they have very black and white thinking. So when I start talking to them about character traits, I'll say, okay, well, what do you think of that character? How can you describe them? And they'll tell me, well, they were feeling happy or they were feeling sad. Or they'll tell me they were good or they were bad. And my job as an educator is to stretch their thinking. I think that over time, the more experiences they have with literacy and the more they have role models guiding them, they become more critical thinkers. And I think that's the main purpose of education, is to build critical and analytical grown-ups. We're raising these kids to be independent and be our future. So for my role as an educator, I think my main goal is to help guide children in becoming more mature, have higher level vocabulary, and higher level thinking skills.
Thank you, Ms. Robin. This kind of brings us to our last question for the night. And this question's for our entire panel. What we'll do is we'll start with you, Mrs. Smith, and just kind of roll down through everybody. And so here's our question. What would you say to a parent or a child who in the past was reluctant to participate in state assessments? What might you say to them?
Okay, first of all, I would address parents and children. First, to a parent, as you've been reassured with the information tonight, the tests have been redesigned to meet the needs of students and teachers. I encourage you to take advantage of this tool. As you've heard again and again, it's just another tool in a toolbox. It's another data point. It's another snapshot into your child's strengths and weaknesses, and it gives teachers the ability to create a fuller picture of your child in their educational journey. To children, they look to you for guidance. You're their role model, and what you need to do is you need to create a positive attitude and encourage them to, as you heard over and over again, to simply do their best. Their job, their purpose right now is to simply do their best at school. and know, again, we talk about the different things that the children are learning, a growth mindset. It's okay to do something, to not do it great the first time, and you learn by your mistakes every single time. In the future, your children will be taking high-stake assessments in high school and college. As a teacher and a parent of 2 college students, I know very well how difficult and challenging these tests can become. Giving them the opportunity to practice now is a good thing. Allow them to have the experience to build confidence and stamina with the process. Provide them the opportunity to take the test in a safe environment where they're comfortable, and to realize that meeting challenges, wherever they may be, is an essential life skill. Thank you.
I think I would say to a parent that was reluctant, it's true that your child will feel stress, but stress is okay. And it's important for them to learn that they can overcome it by protecting them from stress in the lower grades. We are delaying it, and the stress is going to compound over time. So I think, yes, it's okay that your child is going to feel a little bit of stress. They're going to come out stronger, and they're going to be all right.
I think if I was speaking to a parent who was reluctant, I would, ask them to think of one reason to take. Yeah.
Thanks.
Ask them to think of one reason to take the test, and even if that reason was, just solely for practice, and then just kind of make that commitment to that reason, and then ultimately decide what to do when the results come in. I think it's fair to say that we might all, take a different path with that. We might study the results very carefully and want more information, or as Ms. Icon said, and this is what I do. I said I look at the results. My kids want to know everything, so they asked about it, but I did struggle with sharing it with them. And I said, these are the results, what does it mean? And then I put it aside, because we do get so much other information from teachers, from our report cards, and just, I would emphasize that it is one piece of a child's profile, one piece of the puzzle. I do have this conversation with my children who are in that age, the grade range of taking the assessments, because they are very aware that they might be sitting in a different classroom, or many of their kids are doing other activities that day. But I have a very open conversation with them and say, listen, I said, this is a part of life. I know it's stressful. I know you might be confused by thinking that there's a choice involved. But I say, do the best that you can. I'm here to support you. You take tests and assessments all the time, and I do try to be honest, to downplay it a bit and not make it this, overly burdensome activity.
I'll just say ditto. Now, to a parent or child who is reluctant to sit down for assessment, I would say to them, remember, or ask the question, how did you learn to ride a bike? How did you learn to become a better reader? How did you learn to play your sport, whatever activity it was? You practice. That's how I approach it with my own children, is that this is just a practice for other assessments you're going to be taking on in life, your future assessments, AP exams, Regents, SAT, ACTs. There's a gamut of assessments that they're going to have to sit and take for high school and then into college years as well. And this will just help prepare them for those assessments. Given the opportunity to see what it's like to sit and take a test like that. I did speak with my older children, both are in high school now, and I just said, what was your experience? What did you take from taking the assessments through the years? And things have happened and have changed, and our pandemic right now obviously also guided different avenues of the assessment. But my children basically said, and I'm going to read it straight from them: less test anxiety, time management, which my senior is saying helped a lot on his exams through the years, knowing, even though the ELA and the math, they're not timed, but just knowing you have the time to sit down and take a test and how long it's going to take to read a passage and answer the questions to go along with that. That's huge, especially in the later years. He told me being able to sustain a attention for a long period of time and remaining focused. And I was teasing him, and I said, exactly, I said a lot of kids can remain focused very well on devices these days, but to have that focus and actually pay attention to what's in front of you and not get distracted is a big thing. And I will say, it was not always easy through the years, and I do have a fifth grader who's going to be taking them. And there are open discussions in my house as well, plenty of discussions and some tears. I will say, tears through the years definitely have happened, but I'm hoping that for the children that do take the assessment, the payoff in the end will be children will be better prepared in many areas and not just the test taking. Thank you.
I'll go back to my headline. It's low stakes, high leverage for us as school districts, as school buildings, as classroom teachers, as interventionists, as parents. These are valuable sources of data that help us inform instruction aligned with our standards. When the floor fell out and we had the real large number of opt-outs beginning in 2015, I did get a lot more compliments as a building principal. So every spring I would get a letter that started like this. Thank you, Principal Christie. We thank you for all that you do for our schools. And then it went on to inform me that their child was not going to sit for the ELA or math. And I'd like to hopefully reframe that question this spring, and thank you, Administrator Christie, for providing us some important information on the value of these assessments, and we're grateful that our child sat for the ELA or math assessment. There really is no disadvantage. And they're in a safe space. They're in their classroom with their teacher and with their peers. And I'll just end with this. As Mr. Frankel talked in the introduction, that we as a school district were identified as a targeted school in relationship to assessment results. There can be some positive aspects to assessment results and participation rate. For instance, although we had an abbreviated number of boys and girls that took the ELA and math last year, we outperformed Suffolk County in boys and girls that scored in proficiency levels, level 3 and level 4, by nearly 20%. And that just goes to show you the great work that's taking place. We want to be able to recognize ourselves for that work. And I'll give one last example. For instance, the federal blue ribbon designation. In order to even get the key to open the door to look inside the home, which is our schools, with all the great things that are taking place, we need boys and girls to sit for our assessments. That's the first gatekeeper. And how easy is that? And because we deserve to be recognized with all of the other great schools in our region, because we are one of them. Thank you.
I would tell parents to be informed. The tests have changed. The information that we gather from these tests can be a useful tool to help us address your child's needs and to assess how they're performing and how they're performing towards grade level standards. So it's a tool that is just another piece that can be useful information on how we can again help your child. And I just want to piggyback on something the parent said. I do agree very strongly about it's good practice. Test taking is a skill for tests like this, and it is something that the more your child gets comfortable with it and familiarizes themselves with it, it will only serve to help them later on down the line when they are sitting for high stakes exams like Regents tests, SATs, and ACTs.
I would like to point out that many years ago, upon just moving to this district, I was one of those parents that wrote a letter to Dr. Christie thanking him and praising him for being a principal, and also signing my child out of the test. It was a different time. There was not a lot of things we didn't know. We were still reeling from the fallout of 2012, and it really affected a lot of people. But given that everything's turned around and changed, I try to break things down in simplest terms. I coached sports, varsity sports, for about 15 years, and one of the things that I always learned, whether they were 18 or whether they were 13, it's all based on fundamentals. Test taking is a fundamental skill. Getting your mind straight is a fundamental skill before you participate in any activity. As adults, parents, teachers, whatever we may be, we model everything for our children. How to brush your teeth, building and maintaining relationships, studying for tests, throwing the ball. After modeling and showing them how to do it, we pull back and we say, you must practice. As that's been the common theme up here, for all the practicing we do inside and outside of school, it does seem a little odd now that the test is more aligned with what we're teaching, that we wouldn't practice until it actually counts. Can you imagine actually having your child participate in a play or other performance or a sporting event, having not practiced at all? Even when they do practice, they still have things to learn. But having not practiced at all and then going into something that has a high degree of output to it. Very, very risky. The role assessments play in our children's lives as they transition into adulthood, at some point, they need to be exposed to these natural rigors and help them adjust and be able to grow and develop in accordance with their age and what their expectations are. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, you do hear a lot of the time we're teaching to the test. Guess what? Right now, we are teaching to the test because we're teaching to a test that's based on the same standards that we are framing our curriculum around. So there's no way we're not teaching to the test. And ultimately, that's why so many parents, about 10 years ago, pulled their children and wanted their children not to take the test because we were not teaching to standards. We were teaching to, by all accounts, ridiculous questions that didn't really relate to their age, their developmental level. And that's where, as Dr. Christie so pointedly coined before, that's where the floor file. So it's a little bit new. It's going to be an adjustment for people, but as Ms. Franklin says, be informed. This information is readily available on our website, as the state website as well. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for being here this evening, especially our panel. This happened because of your hard work and commitment through our conversations about how these questions evolved. I'd also like to thank our board members, especially Mr. Governale, who's sitting in our audience tonight, as this is supported by our board. This is supported by our superintendent. And I think it's important that we recognize that this is not just something as a district improvement team. This is part of our district process for helping our students achieve the highest level that they possibly can. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much, parents. Thank you very much, students, for joining us tonight. If you do have any questions about state assessments, I do ask you to please reach out to your child's teacher. Reach out to your child's principal. Reach out to Dr. Christie in the Office of Curriculum Instruction. Reach out to me. Reach out to Mr. Franklin. Reach out to our interventionist. We all are here to support and help our children, and of course to guide you as parents through this process. So everybody have a wonderful evening. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.